The other conversation we're having this evening is about a two-child policy bill that was introduced in Rajya Sabha on Friday. Now, this is a private member's bill. Now, someone asked me, what is a private member's bill? It's basically when an individual member of parliament introduces a bill to parliament, and it's not exactly pushed by the government of the day. It's one individual, they can bring the bill forward as a suggestion, and then it's up to the other members of whether or not they want to take it forward. I must tell you at the beginning of this conversation that the odds of a private member's bill being accepted are very slim. But the private member's bill was introduced by BJP MP Rakesh Sinha. It seeks basically to disallow or to disqualify people who have 3 or more children. So they won't be able to contest polls for parliament, for assemblies in their states, or for local bodies. Now, this bill or this rule is already applied in some panchayats. The bill also proposes a denial of financial benefits and a reduction of benefits of public distribution system. That's basically ration and your gas cylinder. Those basic facilities that you get from the government will actually be denied to you if you have 3 or more children. This is an attempt of penalizing people so that they don't have more than 2 children. As a result, it's an attempt to keep the population down. Now, there are some glaring problems with this. Problem number 1, it is witnessed in places where it is already in effect. There's a higher rate of female feticide. So basically, women are forced to have abortions if the baby is a girl because they only have 2 chances. So the family wants a boy. So they will keep aborting baby girls until they have a baby boy. And that's actually terrifying. The second problem is that this sort of penalization will hit most of all the poorest and the most marginalized in our society. Does India need to penalize people, or should we be actively looking at educating and providing more access to contraception? Remember, our budget allocation to this sort of thing has actually come down. Joining me on the conversation, Vivek Reddy for the BJP, and an expert in this matter, Poonam Muthreja, the Executive Director of the Population Foundation of India. Poonamji, good evening. Thank you, Vivek Reddy, for joining us. My first question is to Poonam Muthreja. Poonamji, this is the second time we're having this conversation about the possibility of a two-child policy and penalizing people for having more than 2 children. Straight up question to ask is, what happens if there's a couple that's pregnant for the second time? It turns out to be twins. You now have 3 children and you've fallen on the wrong side of this particular rule. Do you believe this is the solution to our population problem? Poonamji.
You know, a 2-child norm is not a solution and should never be considered as a solution for a range of reasons. First of all, what you said, God forbid they have a twin. If the 2-child policy is, whose fault is it? Is it the fault of the 3rd child? But the first reason I believe we don't need a 2-child norm is because fertility is declining across India, across political, across religious groups, with a much faster pace than even 5 years ago. You know, the UN report, which said India will cross China at 2022, has postponed the date to 2027. Third, women in India and families in India, average, do not wish to have more than 2 children. They want greater access to family planning services. Fourth, it penalizes women. As it is, women, whether they have twins or not, they don't have control on the number of kids they have. They don't have agency to exercise their right as to how many children they'll have. And on top of that, you penalize them by making them, first, not giving them the adequate family planning services and empowerment where they have more children than they want. And then you penalize them double, that they can't stand for elections, their children won't get the benefits that every child in our country should. In fact, one of the details that I'd like to point out from this private member's bill is that the first child, and if there's only a daughter in a family, she will get free education till university. So if there's a poor family, they send their first child, daughter to school and she's educated with a scholarship, and the second child will be kept at home if they don't have the money to educate the child. I mean, it is bizarre that the data is staring at us. Yesterday also, the SRS new data that has come out, which is a yearly which comes out yearly, has said fertility is declining faster than we imagined in India. So what do we need to do? Punitive measures might just, in a democracy, do what happened in 1975, right? Where we were set back by 30, 40 years on the family planning program. So I really want to say, Faye, that we should look at the data. It defies the idea, the very idea of a two-child norm. And then we have lessons from China. Sex, as you said, sex ratios will decline, more female fetuses will be aborted. And Bihar is a classic example where they have a two-child norm. And if you see the SRS data all over India, sex selection has increased, because as people are having fewer children, the son preference exists and they want more and more boy children. But if we put this two-child norm, then our sex selection is going to be unmanageable in the country.
Well, I want to bring in Mr. Vivek Reddy of the BJP. Mr. Reddy, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Would you be able to tell us what the BJP stand is on this two-child policy? Is this something that you're likely to support?
Well, I really don't know. The BJP is yet to take a stand, Faye.
Okay.
So I will not be able to give you anything about the official stand of the BJP as of now, because the bill is introduced just recently. The second issue is, personally, if it is my opinion, I think this has to be clamped, because over the past 60 years or 70 years since independence, we have seen that the population of India has tripled. And tripling has had a huge effect on our resources. Merely because we could not control population, or it went rampant, does not mean that it should continue in such a manner. And what are the ill effects of such a huge bursting population? The nation will be completely incapacitated to cater to the needs of citizens. We need to, as we modernize, we need to bring in basic infrastructure. We need to bring in various facilities to the people. And as more and more numbers grow, I don't think the state will have the capacity, or even forget the state, our societies will have the capacity to cater to these demands. I think it is in the interest of the country. Ultimately, Faye, we are looking at a population of about 131 crore and a world population of about 775 crore today. And just imagine, we are the major contributories, the biggest channels that is feeding humans into the world population. And we need to consider how exactly we need to balance this growth. And it is high time that we clamp. We are not in a situation like China, because China had a one-child policy 40 years back in 1979. And today, if we continue with the two-child policy, it will just be a replacement of the population. It will just replace the existing 131 or 135 crores, which is nominally bound to grow before ever such a law comes into place. So I think in the larger interest of society, and to ensure that that material resources are
I just want to point out, Mr. Reddy, just 1 second, if I may. China's one-child policy was a complete failure. I also want to point out, then this is research that you will have as well. The recent budget that was announced, the 2019 budget by Mr. Nirmala Sitharaman, if we compare it to the budget of the last 4 years, our family planning allocation from the central government has remained stagnant at 4% of the national health budgetary allocations. Now, consider the fact that the number of people in our country hitting reproductive age or sexually active ages of 16 and above has completely ballooned in the last couple of years, whereas we've kept our allocation to this problem steady. It is inadequate. 18% of our population right now is between the ages of 15 and 24. Now, these are the people who desperately need education on contraception, access to contraception, education on safe sex. We're cutting those budgets. The work that we should be doing, we're cutting those budgets. We're talking instead of how this is going to completely turn. So on one hand, you're celebrating the fact that we're the youngest country and how our economy is going to double because we're so full of young people. But on the other hand, if you're not going to teach these young people safe sex and or give them access to contraception, you will have a population problem whether or not you bring in a two-child policy.
No,
isn't this basically hypocritical, Mr. Reddy?
That is why I feel, no, even if there is a 4% allocation for family planning since the past 4 or 5 budgets, and if you continue to see, if we say that there is the same figure of 4% for perhaps the past few years, irrespective of the governments, whether it is the NPA or the UPA, one thing stands out, Faye.
Which is?
The population burst is still growing. I mean,
because you're not increasing your contribution to family planning.
Even if you change the allocation by 1 or 2%,
it will make a big difference, Mr. Reddy.
Faye,
Come on.
Look at it this way. Even
Come
if you
second.
increase that budget by
it will make a huge difference.
I don't think it's going to change.
Ask the person who's actually doing this job on the ground. Ms. Mutreja,
well, let me tell you one thing.
Explain. If there was a change of 1% of the budgetary allocation from the national health budget, from the National Health Mission towards family planning, what sort of change would it make? And isn't this hypocritical?
Yes.
Do you think you would have applied brakes to the population growth?
No,
yes.
It will make a huge difference if we increase the budget. 1 minute, Mr. Reddy. I first want to say to you that I want to really welcome your party's commitment and interest to family planning. And I mean that very seriously. And some of the points in you've got your party or the bill and what articulation I'm hearing in the media is absolutely welcome. We need to focus on reducing population because there is a unmet need for family planning, which is 13%. And why are 30 million women not having access to family planning and therefore having children is because our budgets are low and also our programs need to be more effective. We need to reach women, the most backward, poorest, Adivasi and other women have least access to family planning. So I hope your government will focus on that. Then as Faye said, 70% of our population is increased. What we call the population momentum comes from the fact that we have a young population. And you know how much out of this meager 4% budget of family planning, we only spend, earlier we used to spend 1.5% in 2013. Fortunately, we are spending between 3 to 4%, but that's too small an increase on spacing methods for our young people. Third, we need to increase age at marriage, which means we need to invest in education and health. And let me say 2 more things to you, sir. In Kerala and Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, they did not have a 2-child norm, but they are minus fertility rates for all communities. Why are they minus fertility rate? Because in these states, they invested in education and health and better budgets and better services. In the northern part of India, where we have a problem, there is 40% of the budgets are not even spent. So what I would push your government and request your government to do is better governance on family planning services. And lastly, I'd like to say China did not stabilize its population because it had a 1-child norm, which has terrible consequences. So they had to do away with it in 2015. But China invested in education and health of its population and women especially. And I want to go to our neighboring Sri Lanka, which increased age at marriage and the fertility and putting women in jobs, creating job opportunities for women, while we are doing the opposite, where our workforce participation rates for women is decreasing.
Yes.
Sri Lanka did the opposite, and
yes.
it led to a huge decline,
China,
and very quick decline. And I
Okay. One second. I have to take a quick break. Yes.
Contentious effect in blocking population growth.
Because she just explained
You had
it to you.
to bottle up the population growth.
You bottle up the population growth, Mr. Reddy, by giving everybody condoms and giving everybody contraceptive pills and teaching them how to use it and making sure it's available in every village.
Yes,
and when
yes.
you give women
Also,
access to
Faye,
facilities,
Faye,
women know that they don't want to
not-
have more than
it is
2
just
babies.
not condoms, let me tell you. We also need to address the fact that some people have 4 wives and 16 children. What do we do for that?
Who are these people?
Even that has to be changed.
No, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second.
Otherwise,
Sorry,
this
I'm
can't continue
not going to take a break
endlessly.
right now. Who are these people, Mr. Reddy?
That also has to change. And
No,
that
Mr.
change
Mr.
has
Reddy,
to come about
Mr. Reddy, come
with
on,
some
say it.
understanding.
Say it. Who are these
It
people?
has to come about with some understanding.
Answer my question. Who are these people you're talking about?
Well, whoever it may be.
You should know.
Whoever
No?
it may be.
Okay, so I will,
Whoever
since
it
you,
may be.
okay, since
In
Mr.
some-
Reddy,
in one
okay, 1 second. If you can't answer the question, stop talking.
4 wives are permissible.
Stop talking. Mr. Reddy is obviously not in the habit of doing
What do you
research.
mean I can't stop answer the question?
Because
In
you're
one
not answering my
community, it is
question.
permissible.
Okay, I'll tell you. Do you know who has the most number
It is
of
not the
babies?
question of
1 second,
research,
Mr.
Faye.
Reddy. Do not
It is
interrupt
not the
me on my
question of
own show.
research.
Do not
You are
interrupt me.
comparing one child population policy of China to 2-child population policy in this bill. How can you compare it? You simply can't compare it.
Are you done? All right. So I just want to point out that what Mr. Reddy and the BJP are trying to do with this
How can you
bill.
compare it, Faye? I don't know.
Cut his mic.
You tend to pick up things.
Cut his mic.
You tend to.
What Mr. Reddy and the BJP are attempting to do with this bill is to divide our society even further, because the argument that he is bringing into this conversation is the fact that the Muslim population of our country is actually having more children than the rest. Whereas, and I'll bring in Mr. Poonam Mutrija, who is with the population control team that has been doing this work for many, many years, where the census has proven in India that the people who have the most or the highest fertility, which means that they're having the most babies, are those who are polygamous within the other society. So basically, men who leave their wives and marry other women, and leave that wife and marry another woman, and leave that wife and marry another woman, are the ones who have the highest rate. And it has absolutely nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with the levels of education. The lower the level of education and the lower the literacy levels in particular areas, the higher the possibility of polygamous relationships and more babies. Poonamji, do you want to just bring us in on that data, on the fact that the data has proven it has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with literacy and access to education.
Absolutely. So if you take parity for education and literacy of whichever religious, including Muslim communities in Kerala, they have fewer children because economically Kerala is more advanced, and whether Hindus or Muslims, they have higher levels of education and incomes. So they all have minus fertility growth rates in Kerala, which has a large Muslim population. In UP, Bihar, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, if there is parity for, meaning equality for number of children they have, if their income levels, education have parity. There is no data in the country to prove any religious community, and there is no evidence, has more children than the other. It depends not on your religion, it depends on your economic status, education, and the services that are available. And the second point that I want to make is it's not just India. This is the same outside India too. Also, finally, I'd like to say that in countries, including Muslim countries like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, the fertility rates are much lower than India because they also offer a range of services in family planning. In India, we have very few methods for spacing. We need to increase those methods. In spacing, we need to increase the budgets because we will have the same results as in Indonesia and Bangladesh.
All right.
I would like to
Poonamji,
say
1 second. We'll have to take a quick break. We'll have to take a quick break.
Anybody can give me evidence that there is a difference between religious fertility rate. I would love to see the data, and I will stand corrected. I would like to request the spokesperson to provide that data. I will stand corrected.
Well, there is no data, and this is where, and there is a question that Shika Gupta has asked me, what is the plausible practical solution to control population? Education, 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 education. We have to give people access to the information that it is possible to control the population. It is possible to limit the number of children you have. These are the various ways in which you can do it, and we have to give access to that method free of cost. We have the systems, it has worked in some parts of the country, we just have to make sure it's implemented correctly in other parts of the country. All of these young people who've hit the ages of 15 to 25 in our country must have access to safe sex, information on safe sex and information on contraception. That is the way to do it. And of course, the most brilliant idea that Poonamji brought up was the fact that if you give more and more jobs and work opportunities to women, you know how we career women are. We put off having babies as much as we can for as long as possible. We're selfish. So give us jobs, give women jobs, give them careers, give them ambition, and you will immediately control the population of your country. Quick, break we're going to take, and we'll come back on the other side. One BJP Neta has made the most bizarre comment. He has said that Sakshi, who ran away and got married to a Dalit boy, will result in people killing their daughters. On the other side, don't go anywhere.